This is Brandon from Gain Strength Training Gym, and we're talking about programming today. So I want to be clear with everyone that I've been training, with everyone that I'm friends with everyone that I've talked to about training over the years, competing over the years, any of that stuff. There are many systems that work for weight training. There are many systems that work for weightlifting. I think the trick is finding the one that works for you and your level of development right now, as it is today, Monday. I think that's the trick. There are many systems in which many people get world records. There are many systems that work for different athletes. There are many systems that work for different people. I think the trick is finding what the balance is for your work to rest ratio. I think you need to find what the balance is between how you respond from different types of training and kind of where you're at developmentally as an athlete or as a person trying to get in better shape. There's obviously, classes that we can talk about as far as being a novice or being intermediate or being advanced or being an elite weightlifter / athlete, and all of those factors should be taken into consideration instead of just going into any program, say 5-3-1, 5x5, drill bins table, Smolov, Russian squat cycle, any of those things. All of them are valuable in the right situation. But I want to talk about two main things today. One is conjugate system and then the Russian system, both of which I believe have a great deal of value. And both, I believe, can potentially work very, very long term depending upon the athlete and depending upon work-rest ratios and how recovery works for that person and their level of skill development. So I'm going to start with the Russian percent system. So we have 60% to 69% at the bottom of the pyramid. We have 70 to 79% in the next tier up. We have 80 to 89% at the third tier up. We have 90% plus efforts on the fourth tier, and on the fifth tier is the 1RM, the big single. So when talking to Shaco and learning from Shaco, Shaco said 60 to 69% is a 6 repetition as far as training goes. These are not rep maxes. These are training repetitions. So the Russian system is predicated upon a lot of main movement volume and a lot of tonnage just based around main movements. So bench press, overhead press, clean and jerk, snatch, any of those things. You're kind of looking at these repetition schemes for more of the, let's say, classical barbell movements as opposed to some of the Olympic movements, which are obviously happening more in double and triple and single sets. So let's say barbell bench press, barbell back squat, deadlift, and overhead press are going to be trainable by these numbers. So 60 to 69 is a 6, 70 to 79 is a 4 or a 5, depending on how intense it is. And 80 to 89 is either a 3 or a 2. And then 90 to 99 is a 1, and 100 is obviously 1. So these are training repetitions, I would say, outside of this one. This would be your 1 repetition maximum. So the idea is that you do, over time, greater volumes of these percentages. So you're readying the body with the main movement to take on bigger shots of 90% of your single. If you progress well through the 99 to 90%, then you have a big single improvement waiting for you. Once again, this is a good system. It works for many people. Obviously, this is not a novice system. Anyone that is doing 10 by 6 at 65% is already pretty far along the barbell continuum as far as what they can recover from. So 60 reps in a workout of, let's say, barbell back squats or deadlifts or bench presses is definitely not for somebody who is just barely starting, let's say, their novice or intermediate progression, right? 10 by 6 is 60 reps, somewhere between 60 to almost 70% of their 1 rep max. That's a decent amount of volume for one day's work, especially if they're going to be doing a lot of assistance work later. The bigger kind of differences between the two methods, you can see I've got the wheel of the conjugate method on this side. So the big differences between the two are going to be, one is a stepwise interval up. without a ton of assistance work. This can be problematic for people who have, let's say, a big injury history, or for people who have, let's say, very, very, very undeveloped weak areas of their body, which this will not address with basic main movement volume. So, like I said, either one of these systems can work, and can work for any one person at any one time, but there are definitely benefits and negatives to each of them. And so it's important that you know who you are and where you're at developmentally and put yourself there, accordingly. So for the conjugate system, we have a rotating pie chart here of maximum effort, repetition effort, and dynamic effort. All three of those should make up equal thirds of the pie. And so you're looking at maximum effort being testing rep maxes or testing the barbell movement that you're training currently as one part of the training for the week. You're looking at repetition effort or bodybuilding style hypertrophy methodology for the second part of the wheel, and then dynamic effort, which is basically speed training or rate of force development training for the third spoke of the wheel. All three of those are important in the conjugate system, and there really isn't an aspect of those three that shows up, let's say, in the training methodology of, let's say, the standardized Russian-Soviet system. And once again, that may be fine developmentally for who you are and where you're at. So it's not that one of these is better than the other, but I think it's important to understand the differences if you're going to program for yourself, one or the other. So when we talk about ME, we're talking about rep maxes. So for let's clear the air on this quickly. People who are following West Side barbell methodology, who are raw lifters, need to knock it off right now. There's too many 90%, there's too much workload, there's too much volume too often, and you will not be able to recover from it unless you are somebody who is, let's say, taking the vitamins. Anyway, if you're taking the vitamins, then you might be able to stuff all of this work into a week. What I'm doing at Gains is spreading the workout so it can be more sustainable long term, and so people can actually recover from a lot of this work. So I have split the maximums into rep maxes instead of ones or twos, instead of a stereotypical like single training system, which is more typical of the conventional Bulgarian method, which became the conjugate method at Westside Barbell. So what I've decided to do is make 6 RMs, a 3-week cycle, 4 RMs, a 3-week cycle, 2 RMs, a 2-week cycle, a 3-week cycle, 5 RMs, a 3-week cycle, 3 RMs, a 3-week cycle, and 1 RMs, also a 3-week cycle. So you need 3 weeks for each of these because you basically have 9 workouts for all 3 lifts. So let's say you're doing a standard powerlifting routine. So you're going to have bench press, you're going to have squat, and you're going to have deadlift. Each one of these needs one of those workouts in the week. So this is going to be at least a 3-week wave for each one of these. So bench press has an ME, has an RE, and a DE, right? And the same goes through the other lifts. So you basically have 9 training sessions that you have to circulate through before the cycle can start over again. So at the end or beginning of the cycle, I'm going to check everything based off of a 6RM. That 6RM, right, after 3 weeks of rotating through all of those lifts, right, gives me information about what potentially the 4RM may be. The next week, the next cycle, the next training cycle from 4 is 2. So the 4 informs how heavy the 2 could potentially be. The 5 influences the 3, and the 3 influences the 1. So in 8 training days, you have an incomplete number of workouts. So let's say you work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. You're going to have 1 or more of each of these on board in that week. So you may choose to do max effort bench press on Monday. And then on Wednesday, you choose to do dynamic effort squat. And let's say on Friday, you decide to do repetition effort deadlift. And then let's say on Saturday, you decide to do repetition effort bench press. That all works. What you're trying to do is in 3 weeks, if you have a 4-day exercise rotation, you're trying to take everything from 9 workouts and put them into the training week in a way that's based on your own recovery. So if you are bench pressing really, really hard, doing repetition effort work, which is basically bodybuilding work, and so you're doing high repetitions and you're doing less amount of rest time between each set, and then you feel pretty tired from that, it's probably not a good idea to then try to do maximum effort bench on Wednesday. You should probably, if you want to bench again in the same week, save that for Friday or Saturday. So follow the law of 72 hours, which is basically a recovery window that makes sense to train barbell lifts long term. So those are the basic distinctions on the max effort cycle and how to schedule that stuff. So repetition effort is going to be based on weak point training. So let's say you have lagging rear delts and you are working on creating a more stable shoulder girdle so that your prime movers can exert more force without creating imbalances further in your shoulder. The idea is that you're creating a more stable platform from which to press from. Let's say your lats are weak and your triceps are weak. So on your repetition effort day, this is where drop sets come in, this is where time sets come in, this is where working on eccentric phase and isometric phases and concentric phases of muscle contraction are really valuable. But you're not really doing a whole lot of main movement exercises. You're not doing an ME, right? You're trying not to touch the barbell. So do anything you can that does not have the barbell involved. Dynamic effort method is speed training. So maximum effort is moving a heavy weight slowly, right? Or you're basically trying to move a heavy weight as fast as possible, but because it's so heavy, your body moves slowly because it's a heavy weight. You're trying to increase the amount of neural recruitment to all the muscle fibers that you have in your body in that one exercise. You're doing the same thing here, but the weights are way lighter, and you're looking at moving the bar somewhere between 0.9 meters per second and 1.1 meters per second. I would say on max effort day, the idea would be to, if you track velocities, it would be to not go below like a 0.25 for maximum effort work. If you go below 0.25, that's your last repetition. Most likely a repetition after that is going to be a failed movement. It's going to be a failed repetition. And the idea is to train your nervous system to complete movements, not to make movements incomplete. So with the dynamic effort, you have a small wave, which is 50%, 40%, and 30%. This follows a very simple prescription. So understand that one of these workouts, one of these training sessions, goes along with this 18-week progression, right? So this would be cycle 1, this would be cycle 2, this would be cycle 3, this would be cycle 4, this would be cycle 5, this would be cycle 6. So you have a 3-week rotation because you have 3 different training methodologies to work through for each one of your lifts, and you have 6 different rep maxes to check, which means that each one of these days gets thrown into, let's say this is 10 by 1, this is 10 by 2, and let's say this is 10 by 3. You would then recycle those numbers for cycles 4, cycles 5, and cycles 6. Remember that you're going to cycle through all of those percentages and all of those numbers as a part of conjugate system training. Now this is set up differently than a lot of people set it up. A lot of this depends on who the person is training, what their training age is, what their injury history is. All of those things come into account here. The trick for me in setting up a conjugate method for gain strength training gym was I train individuals, and so I can make this as sustainable or as intense as I want to make it, depending on the athlete's readiness. If the athlete is ready to do shorter cycles and harder single, double, and triple attempts, I can do that. Most of the people that train in gains are not competitors. Some are and some are not. But the general population of competitors to non-competitors are far outweighed by the people that do not compete. So then a big, long 18-week cycle makes a lot of sense. You're going to get a chance to check in at all of these repetition maximums over 18 weeks. And actually only do some very, very, very heavy attempts only a couple times in that 18 weeks. So this can be a very sustainable system if you know how to set it up for who you're working with. This can also be a very sustainable setup if you know, once again, who you're working with. Both of these work great. The trick is setting it up right for the person. So let me erase the board here, and I will talk about how to schedule it in the three-week cycle and how I'm setting it up for us here in Vancouver, Washington. I have no idea what accent that was. So Monday, I'm going to bench press, dynamic effort. Wednesday, I'm going to squat, maximum effort. Friday, I'm going to deadlift, dynamic effort. And on Saturday, I'm going to bench press, repetition effort. So I have 2 bench presses in my first week. That means I only have 1 bench press training session to go over the next week and a half, basically. So week 2, Monday, I'm going to do a squat, dynamic effort. Wednesday, I'm going to do a deadlift, maximum effort. Friday, I'm going to do my bench press, maximum effort. And Saturday, I'm going to do my deadlift repetition effort. So I have 8 days accounted for in 2 weeks, so I need 1 more day to make my 9-day training cycle work. What do I have left? I have 1 bench press, 2 bench press, 3 bench presses. I have 1 squat, 2 squat. Oh! I have a squat day left. So I have squat dynamic effort, and I have squat maximum effort, but I haven't done a repetition effort yet. So, there's my 3-week wave. So as you schedule your lifting, I would recommend, if you're going to run a conjugate system, be mindful of how rested you are. Be mindful of your recovery. Be mindful about your readiness and how hard you're going to train. Let's say you're pretty tired, fatigued from, let's say, a bench press repetition effort method. Your triceps are toast and your lats are lit up. You're trying to make sure that you're ready to do maximum effort later in the week. Then you better stretch it out further along that timeline and not just do it within 24, 48 hours. Assistance work is literally by the person. Where are you weak? Emphasize your weak points in the training. Emphasize the areas where you're very, very, very imbalanced. Left side, right side imbalances, anterior, posterior imbalances. General muscle belly thickness can sometimes be a clue as to what to work on. But in general, assistance work is where the tonnage is gained in this system, as opposed to the main movement system on this side. If you have been, like me, somebody who has done a lot of main movement work over here on the Russian side of the system, which, let's be honest, I now squat 500 pounds, does work. It's taken me a long time to get there, and I have a bunch of imbalances that have not been addressed by this system. This system will now address those imbalances for me because it's built into the training. So my experience going forward is going to be more along the conjugate method style of training and be less of the Russian model. Once again, not that there's anything wrong with each one, but they are very different and they emphasize different things. And for the qualification of the lifter, their training age, their training history, their injury history, all of those things need to be taken into account when assigning either one of the other schools of training methodology. This is Comrade / Conjugate Ice Cream, and I will talk to you all later. Hope this has been edifying, clarifying, and I hope you make good decisions about how you train this next week.